Welcome to Ditch Digger CEO. We've got my good old buddy here, Biju, Chris, our one of our all stars from early on, who has been an amazing entrepreneur in the technology world. It's just a great entrepreneur anyway, even without technology. But he's focused on technology more than anything else. And Biju's got a lot going on, and this guy does not stand still. His world is a lot different today than it was 4 or 5 years ago that we interviewed Biju, and he's going to tell you a lot about it. Biju, welcome to Ditch Digger CEO, buddy.
Thanks, Gary. So excited to be here. So I love your show and love being on it. I love the energy you bring to this.
Oh, it's easy to have energy, when you're talking to people entrepreneurs building fun things and that we can share stories with and maybe even get great ideas from. More importantly, and you're full of those. Okay, there's one thing you're full of. It's great ideas. One of the greatest visionaries I've ever met in my lifetime, and and I've been blessed to meet a lot of them. But so Bijou, we want to just kind of catch up with you, right? We want to kind of go from where we left off, but I from 4 or 5 years ago. But I'd like to do is just a little summary again for those people that didn't listen to your first podcast of the beginnings for 10, let's say 5-10 minutes of the beginnings of your entrepreneurial journey, your American dream, and then we'll catch up with where you are today and where you're going forward, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And thank you so much. I'm somebody who was born outside the United States, born in India. Grew up in India and the Middle East for a little bit, but really spent most of my time in America. And some of the things you can do, it's interesting. I think sometimes the people who appreciate America the most are the people who are not born in America. Because you really see the difference. This is such a unique country in terms of what what you can do here in terms of the ideas, the innovation, the risk appetite to do things, and the ability to change. I think America has always had that history of being dynamic, and I call it American dynamism. I think we're always fortunate to be in this era of American dynamism where we can bring ideas and solve problems in America, but also solve the world's problems. Um,
So, Bijou, when you're growing up, just briefly, growing up India and the Middle East, so how did you know this American dream was accessible somehow? Tell us a little bit about what you knew of America as a young man growing up in India and the Middle East.
yeah, I think that's the interesting thing. I mean, I'd never been to America before I came here to do my studies, and came here to do my undergrad and my degree. But everything I'd learned about America from books I read, movies I watched, songs I heard, and it's really interesting. I mean, I love India. I love a lot of things about Indian culture. As a kid, I grew up in Dubai in the Middle East too, and I love a lot about Middle Eastern culture. I think there are so many great things about family and culture in all those places, but especially growing up in India, which were more of my formative years, um, I could see. I mean, India was a very socialist country back then, and still has a little bit, uh, still some of that socialism now, but it has socialism and so much in regulation. I mean, it had regulation. There was a lot of regulation just to get a phone line installed. A lot of regulation to enroll in school. And you could see, and even as a kid in my teenage years, I had all these ideas about wanting to do. It was just an imagination and just reading about different people in history. I was just a big student of history, and reading about different people in history, and just seeing how regulations and rules basically slow down the best people. This occurred to me as a kid, and I felt, hey,
Hmm.
there's a better way to do this. And just reading about America, I was just kind of inspired to move to America uh, from from an early age, because I just had this. idea that coming to this country, you could pursue your dreams in just a different way, which is, I think, a lot of people have, and a lot of people have come here and done that. And I think that's the beautiful part. And for me, what's really interesting is you can take the same person from another country, from India, from Germany, from France, from Vietnam, right? And the same person, if you look at the world as a closed loop economy, the same person moving from one part of that economy to another part of the economy is just at a much different and higher level of productivity. And what is that? It's not the water we drink, it's not the air we breathe, it's rules and regulations,
Hmm.
and just the ecosystem of capital, other people where we can talk with and do things with. And I think that just makes such a big difference. And that was sort of it intuitively occurred to me as a kid, and I think my life has sort of played out that way in my entrepreneurial journey.
Oh, excuse me. That's it's amazing as a kid that you saw these things. And I've talked to many of my friends that have immigrated here that saw the opportunity much faster and much clearer than people like myself who were raised here, right? I was blessed that somehow I was inspired by entrepreneurs around me to think about building something. But I feel like when you come from another country and you lack the opportunity, boy, it's like it's immediate that you see this American dream much clearer than maybe people that are in it, right? And so,
And I would say on that, Gary, like every immigrant entrepreneur is a double entrepreneur, right? Immigration itself is an act of entrepreneurship, right?
true,
Because
true.
it's sort of like being an immigrant itself is an act of entrepreneurship, and to sort of bring that entrepreneur's energy as an immigrant, and then the second thing is being an entrepreneur in starting your own business. And listen, all of life, my life was none of this for all of us as entrepreneurs was not planned out. We just pursue a dream, and none of this is what we exactly expected it to be. In many ways, it's better than we ever expected it to be because we didn't know that all of this would happen, right? But I think it's sort of pursuing the dream, and I would say the big part of I think the key part of any entrepreneur, the best entrepreneurs, and I think the key part that drives entrepreneurs is entrepreneurship at the end of the day should be an act of service, which is you're not, entrepreneurship is not about making money. You make money, but that's a byproduct. That's the score on the scoreboard. It really is an act of service. And I think that act of service that's what should drive every entrepreneur is like, hey, what are you doing to serve the world around you in producing a better product, in producing better outcomes, in how the world can get a different product.
I love that. Entrepreneurship is an act of service. I believe that as I have grown my life to understand my faith, understand the Bible and Jesus Christ is the walk of Jesus Christ. Right, it's all about serving others, and how we serve others it makes such a difference in our lives. If we're here to serve ourselves, yeah, you might have limited success, right? But it's not going to be easy. If you're here to serve others, just seem to want to serve you, want to be around you, want to be part of that, right? If you're there to serve others, and entrepreneurship is so exciting when we can solve a problem that serves a huge market. And and as you know, and I know, many of the people we know that have done a great job with this do become wealthy. They become very successful, wealthy, and not wanting for much in the way of financial in their future in the long run. But really, I feel like it's the more of a servant you are, the more servant mentality you have, you're blessed to be able to enjoy the happiness of other people, using your product and services, and therefore, wealth kind of comes with that. So, yeah, that's such a great statement. And when I met you originally, a lot, years ago, 20 years ago or so, it was all about, your mind was all about, how do I make an impact? How do I make an impact in this world? How do I make an impact in the industry I'm serving? And that is by being the champion of service, serving, right? And so it's when I looked, at what's gone on in your life for the last 20 years, you've solved major problems in the world, and it's not stopping. You continually say, okay, what's next? What's next? How do I serve a bigger problem, right? And so I want to talk briefly about Redbox, Halo, and then let's go right to this exciting new amazing business that you're involved in now.
Yeah, no, thank you. And Redbox, I was involved very early. One of the early co-founders of Redbox, and basically with Redbox was about it was about providing that entertainment product to a mass market in a much more efficient way. I think the idea was, and I didn't really know much about movies. I didn't know much about retail, but I just knew a lot about robotics and I knew a lot about software. And the idea there was like, hey, I could sort of like dream in my mind if we instead of having like a retail store that was 2,000 square feet, and having people work there and have all this physical inventory in that one store, can you shrink that down to something much smaller, and serve that, and make that automated? And why make it automated, right? The thing about doing that smaller footprint and making it more automated is that you could keep that store effectively open 24/7, okay, without a marginal cost of keeping it open 24/7, right? You automated businesses, we don't start automated businesses to save money on labor. I mean, that's a byproduct. That's not the main reason. The main reason is can you provide a better end user experience for people? That should always be your driver in creating that. I think um, there's sometimes people who come to me with automated retail concepts with just saving money on labor, and those never, in my view at least, those don't largely work in the long term. At the end of the day, you should look at, hey, can you serve a better product? So we did that. That was a great success. Back in the day. Then and with all these different things, right? All these, I didn't care. I know technology really well, and I'm a technology product builder. It didn't matter to me as much if what industry. I'm very industry agnostic, as long as I feel like I know enough about the industry, um, to jump into it. And so at a certain point, I looked at this. I looked at the wealth management industry and looked at, is there a better savings product? Because savings is a big issue for all Americans. So, and people are very invested in the markets. People watch CNBC, read the Wall Street Journal, all these other things. But at the end of the day, people just want to save for a certain, you know, time and place in the future. Maybe they want to buy a home. Their kids are going to get married, or they need to take a vacation. Different life events happening, or they need to retire at a certain point. I think the bigger need is wanting to retire, and so was there a way to create and design a product around that? And that's sort of that is what created Halo. Yeah, Halo started, I think, at this point a little bit more than 10 years ago. So founded that with, made that a really interesting technology platform that played well into the wealth management industry, and made that more of a mass market product. I'm always interested, again, going to the point about entrepreneurship being an act of service. One of the key acts of service there, right, is about making a product that was available to the few, to the many. That's how can you do that? And I think that's a constant theme in American entrepreneurship, and entrepreneurship everywhere, right? Um, um, I think there are a few examples of entrepreneurship where you look at something that was available to the many, you're making that available to the few. It's always the other way around, because that's where productivity, that's where you start seeing efficiency. So again, just created a technology platform that made that savings product available to many, and it's become a great success in the wealth management industry. And Halo's up and running with headquartered in Chicago, serving a big percentage. I think it's the largest independent platform. Independent, independent in terms of it's not owned by a bank or it's
Mhm.
it's independent in that way, serving the U.S. What they call the structured note market in wealth management. And so that became great, and then that's the segue into Lightspeed. Lightspeed was
Hold on. I want to question quicker. When I think about, Redbox and eventually, a new leadership team takes over and takes it to the next level. Eventually, eventually it competes in the markets that are newer, more technology strong. And Redbox is, I don't know if it's still alive anymore, but you build something, you grow it, you move on to the next thing. Many people can't move on. I mean, once they think this is my baby, you're part of founding this thing. It's kind of your baby. You don't want to leave it. That might be more the mentality that I see than okay, man, I've got it this far. It's exciting. I love it, but now I want to do the next thing, right? We got the team's in place. It can take it to the next level. Now I'm going to move on to the next thing. What gives you that mentality? Because it's not as common, in my opinion. Because Halo is a great company. I was an investor. I'm an investor in Halo, great company, and you moved on to take on the next thing. And I was kind of like, hey, why would you leave this company? And your comment to me back then was, hey, got a great team in place. They're going to do a great job with it. I took it to a place that I like, that I'm comfortable. Now I want to go do the next thing. I want to build the next thing. But explain to us that mentality, because it's not as common, I think, as the latter, right? The one that it's kind of my baby. I want to keep building my baby, right? I don't want to leave my baby. So tell us how you do that and how your brain works to continue to build new things.
absolutely no. I would say, like, for me, I never wanted to. I never started a company to be a CEO. I never. That was never my starting design for any company ever. And I think at the end of the day, right, you start companies to solve a problem, and I think that you should always remind yourself that's the reason you're there, and the reason the reason you are the CEO is, hey, are you the is that needed? Becoming a CEO is something that's like solved back into. Is that needed to solve this problem to the next level? At the end of the day, I think different people have different strengths. My strength is really more being, like creating a great product and kind of distributing that at scale uh, to uh, to solve that problem on a larger sense. So when you look at it that way, right, you always look at it as, hey, are you creating like the right kind of structure? Are you creating the right kind of team? And you should always be, the solution to the company should be independent of you, of the individual. And I always say, like, could I have created, in many of these cases, created the, did I, could I have solved that problem by just being the head of product or the head of technology in some of these cases? And it was, in many of those cases, the answer was no. Sometimes it's yes, but in many of those cases, because you have to move the technology, the product with many other different aspects of the company. And so if you look at it that way, I think that's the right way to look at solving things in a company. And I think leadership that way, right, is just leadership comes out of the need to organize at scale to solve that problem at scale. Leadership should not come out of personal ego or the need to uh, you know boost oneself up to, say, wealth or fame or anything like that, right? Leadership should always be about, hey, can you um, can you pull all these different units together, which is capital, people, product ideas to solve the problem at scale. And different people have different strengths. There are leaders who are great at sales, leaders who are great at marketing, leaders who are great at other things. And for me, you know, I've learned over the years that my alpha or my difference, right, was the ability to put uh, product, lead with product and technology in a way to solve market problems that hadn't been solved before. So I think that's the way. I think as a leader, you should always look at, hey, um, your goal in sort of in solving this problem in the market, are you the right person to pull everything together? With many of these tech companies, right? One thing that does happen with tech companies is very often the the company in the way it's organized ends up being a, a persona of its leader, so that's just the way those companies are organized. So that's
Sure.
why you see a big difference between uh, you know, founder CEOs versus non-founder CEOs. And there are certain things, especially when it comes to bigger pivots and things like that, that rarely can you see a non-founder CEO do those at a company. And that's becoming even more and more the case, Gary, with AI and how much technology is changing every industry. People said that was the case with the internet and all that, but now it's even more the case with AI. Um, and that's something, I think leadership that way um, is is going to change for everybody, because I think you're seeing super high levels of productivity with leadership, where you're going to see a 10-person unicorn company, which could not have happened
Mm.
20 years ago. So I think to your point, your original point about leadership, right? I think leadership is like, you as a leader, it should not be about whether it's your baby or not. The real question should be, hey, is the company set up and organized the best way to solve the problem you originally set out to solve? And and you're a leader not because you wanted to be the CEO, you wanted your name on the company webpage. You're a leader because that's what had to be done to solve that problem. And like I said, many of these companies the end up being like a persona of its leader.
For sure, for sure. And leaders, great leaders and entrepreneurs create value, right? First of all, they create value to the customer in amazing service, right, that they provide, product or service they provide, and then they create value, enterprise value, and not being the person that everything is reliant on, right? You build a business just around you, it's your name, and it's just you. Boy, you get hit by a bus, it's just not going to work out so well in that business, right? And so great leaders, they understand how to scale the value proposition to solve more problems, as you said, and then also be able to build that brand that's not just based on them. So for you to be able to go from Redbox into the next venture, and then eventually into Halo, and then now into Lightspeed, you just can't do that if it's all about you. And so that's the difference for sure. And that's what I was getting at. That's what I knew you'd get to it. That you if it's all about you and it's your baby, okay, it's going to be your baby for the rest of your life, and that's what you want. But boy, guess what? That's not going to create value, not just in that product, but also every job, every person's job that's within that organization, right? So your teammates, your vendors, your customers aren't going to gain as much out of a you business as out of a business where you're building the brand outside your own name, right? So that's awesome. So now let's get the Lightspeed, the exciting Lightspeed, okay? Because I'm so excited about this business. Let's talk about Lightspeed and your transition to Lightspeed and what's going on there in the last couple of years and how we're going to change the world next.
Yeah, thank you. No, I think Lightspeed came. I looked at building my own home like 20 years ago, and I just realized, hey, construction in the traditional way was one of the most inefficient industries in this country. The productivity in construction had not changed since the 60s. It's interesting. I think it was like Gardner did a study of 50 different industries in America. 49 over the last 50 years had increases in productivity except for construction. And a lot of that boils down to, like, I mean, we're building homes like we built right after World War II. And a lot of that boils down to productivity, right? We are still doing things completely with people, where we don't do that for a lot of other industries. We don't build cars that way. We don't build iPhones that way. We don't build the laptops that way. We don't do a lot of other things, right? Even food has a very high level of automation. The people talk about how expensive food is, but like compared to 100 years ago, the average American family spend twice as much as a percentage of their income on food than they do today. Okay, actually, they even spend less than that on food because of the massive productivity in agriculture that we've had. But housing has not seen that thing. And what really drove me to found Lightspeed was the fact that inherent problem, and basically housing and shelter is what we spend the biggest part of our paychecks on. Okay, and if you can make a change in that equation, that can have the biggest change on CPI, in this country. So making that, when they talk about affordability, the biggest thing that is unaffordable for people is rent or their mortgage payment. So is there a way to change that? And then that's a problem we wanted to solve, but also the other aspect of it is, I've looked at robotics and software for a long time, but in the last 3 to 4 years, like the changes in AI models that can be applied to robotics, felt, hey, here's a tool to solve that with, right? And I think without this tool, I don't think we would be able to solve it the way we want to solve it. And a lot of people talk about AI with ChatGPT and Claude and all great, fantastic tools. Uh, but those are all tools in what I call the virtual world. But what we are really touching is what I call the world of physical AI, which is AI that touches the physical world. Which in our case, we're doing that in housing, which is we can use our robotics and AI to basically build houses really fast, cheaper, faster, higher quality, a better product overall for Americans. So I think the main drive here, right, in terms of what drove us to do this is just that the availability of housing and the cost of housing. We're short about, Gary, I think we're short roughly about 5 to 7 million homes in this country. Okay.
Wow.
And we've, you know, we've had these problems before and we've solved them as Americans. So I would say right after World War II, if you remember the story of Levittown, right? Basically, I think the entrepreneur's name was Bill Levitt. I might be wrong there, but like he basically built one of those first housing communities at scale, and really unlocked the invention of the American suburb. That's really what all these people returning after the war needed homes, and by in the workflow productivity that he created in solving that, right, really created the suburb, created a big supply of homes. But unfortunately, that was the last big housing boom we had. That was 75 years ago. And we need to do something different to solve the housing problems we have right now. And that's why we're using robotics and AI to do it. So, I mean, we're a robotics and AI company. We are a robotics and AI company first. And it's really about how we use robotics and AI to solve it. But at the end of the day, it's not as much about robotics or AI. It's really about the fact that we're kind of creating this housing supply. So we're in the, you know, it's a year and a half old. We've a small team, but we have a great pathway, I think, to build a large number of homes with this.
Where are you at right now, BG? Talk about where you're at today, and then how long before you predict you're going to be able to. Yeah, I mean, I know what you're doing in your warehouse, building houses, building panelized houses, and then how long before you're able to be on site with robots erecting the houses?
Yeah, so I mean, we have a solution where we use some of the robotics in our warehouse and on site. We've built the first few homes in the early stage, but in 2026, I think as we roll this out, we have some initial pilots that we'll be doing in 2026. But in with these with some of those customers who are all production builders, that's when we'll start seeing rolling it out, and we'll get to certain numbers in 2026 with what we roll out with. But I think with 2026, that'll help improve the technology to a level that we can scale it. For us, the key aspect of this is scaling. Okay, and one thing with scaling here, right? It's not just a technology problem with housing. The problem is the housing industry has so many different layers, right? To build the average 2,000 square foot home takes about 2,000 man hours, roughly. Okay, and that's a crazy number. That's a really, really crazy number in terms of the number of people you have to organize to bring on site to do it, right? And I think most of us probably buy existing homes, but few of us are fortunate or unfortunate to have built a new home, right? And the time and the cost overruns and all the other issues you deal with in building that new home. It's a crazy number. It can take somebody sometimes a year and a half or two. Our goal is to basically cut down the build time from a year and a half to two to a week or two or three. Okay. Now we're not there today. Okay, we're there with a certain percentage of the home, but we're there with I think we can do that on a significant percentage of the home. But the key thing is as we do this at scale, some of those costs and efficiencies really start kicking in. So we want to do it well, and we want to do this at scale, and then we'll start seeing the bigger efficiencies. But I think for us, we want to use these robotics to build out new homes throughout America, but also refresh a lot of our existing housing supply. A lot of our existing homes, unfortunately, are still from the 50s and 60s. A big percentage of our housing supply are still from that time. We don't drive a car that's that old. We don't have phones that are that old. We don't have other things in our home that are that old, right? But our homes are very old, and they're designed for a different time, a different lifestyle. The average size of a home in the 50s was about 1,000 square feet. Today, the average size of a new home is about 2,500 square feet. That's the difference.
Wow, 150% larger. Now, and as you said, you look at the electronics industry when even as short a time as, let's say, 2000 and boy, oh boy, let me think about this, probably 12, 13, I was buying a 42-inch flat screen TV for $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. It was amazing, this plasma flat screen TV. And then today you could buy that for about $100, and it's a better TV than that one, right? It's where there's progress and technology, really takes hold. It's amazing the difference with the quality of life that can be in the future. And you really, I mean, like you're saying, we haven't seen this in the building industry. Things only got more expensive, and it takes longer, as you're saying, 1 man hour per square foot. Okay, that's higher than it was, in my opinion, 20 years ago, probably. And some of that's maybe due to regulation. I'm not sure, a lot of different things, right? But boy, that's not progress. That's not innovation. And so with what you're talking about, you can do it when you do what you're saying, because you will. The cost of a house is driven down. The cost of rent is driven down. More access to those $5 to $10 million homes that aren't on the market today that should be, right? Um, and I've been blessed to be your buddy and to travel to the Middle East with you, to Abu Dhabi and Dubai, to see these thousands and thousands of homes that are going up in 130, 40-degree temperatures, and people dying, right? You're actually going to save lives when it comes to solving the problem of, of the hazards of home building in those high temperatures, if you could do it with robots, right? And you're the master of this, basically, because you don't usually need to raise money, because you're going to build the product with your own cash and your friends and family before you really go to market. But man, these big investors over there were clamoring over wanting to invest in you, because they've seen your past, and one great lesson I saw was your patience, right? To say, no, we don't really need money. We want opportunity to solve problems, and if you can help us there, we're here for you. And sure enough, boy, they had they had more suggestions of how you can solve their problems with them than I ever imagined. But the relationship you build in this innovative entrepreneurial world is incredible, where you've got this wisdom, this name, this brand of building things that solve the problems. It's fun to watch you as you talk to those that are interested in investing, and when you're saying you don't really need money. And if you're a strategic investor, we'd be crazy not to allow you to invest something into this. But unless you're that, just be patient. Someday maybe we'll be a public company you can invest or whatever, right? So it's kind of fun to watch that. So talk about that and how you've come. Were you always like that when it was Redbox early on, or have you just become more of that in your confidence and knowledge of innovation and technology or in entrepreneurship? Tell us about that.
Yeah, I would say, and thank you, and I would say, the important thing, I think, um, uh, uh, confidence always, I think some part of confidence, maybe some part doesn't, but like, confidence are different things, but confidence, one part of confidence is a track record, right? Like you see, and I think when you're an early entrepreneur, you think money is the most important thing, and then you realize as you become more of an entrepreneur, you realize that help is the most important thing, right? You can't do anything alone, right? You're always on the shoulder of giants. And to be on the shoulder of giants, right, you have to get the right people around you. And it's really about people. It's not just the people you hire at the company, but all your stakeholders. And your stakeholders are your investors, your customers, your partners in other different ways. So I think that's the most important thing. I would say money is important, but it's not the most important thing in running or building a company. It's definitely an important thing. It's I would say it's like the lubricant, right? But it's not. But to keep that machine going, you have to bring all these other parts, and I think it should always go. And I think sometimes people make this mistake. They go and pitch when they're trying to raise money. They pitch investors based on, hey, just the return the investors will get. But I think it's a very shallow way of pitching and raising capital, because even most people who are investing, right, they have other places to put their money. So they're not just putting their money with you just because you're going to offer them the highest return. They may be putting their money with you because they think that you're solving a problem that they want to see solved. They're attracted to your cause more than they're attracted to.
Absolutely. I mean, look at
That's a big part of solving these problems.
well, and look at our friend Charlie Kirk, right? Who we lost a couple months ago, and we think about Charlie, right? He was solving problems. There was no return on your investment. You're investing in him is because you want to make a difference in the country and in the world. And many of us invested understood that, and boy, we saw transformation in our college campuses, our high school campuses, and as well as the message of freedom that we didn't see as dominant as it was because of Charlie, right? And so that investment was, as you said, it wasn't because we want to make money. We invested in Charlie to make money. We invested in Charlie because we really believed in this young man, that he could actually make a difference in this world, and this opportunity to enhance this free country, right? And so anyway, but and again, I'll tell you, it's about 10 months ago, I was with Charlie down in Florida here, and mentioned our friend who, he already was friends with you, our friend Biju. You know what Biju's doing now? I go, no, what's he doing, right? He's going to build houses with robots. And no way, right? And Charlie was not a guy that invested in a lot of stuff, except pretty much his own brand and all, and his podcast and all the things he did. But boy, he was excited to talk to you soon after that, because he was, oh gosh, like technology. He goes, robots and it's almost the same thing verbatim of what you say. The development of robots and AI is converging right now at a faster pace than ever. World's going to look much different in a short period of time. And he was saying that right before I told him about Lightspeed. And sure enough, you guys spoke and again, and Charlie always respected you as you did him. And then Charlie, which doesn't invest in much, said, how can I invest? Biju, how can I invest? And your answer was, hey man, Charlie loved if you'd be a strategic investor and kind of talk about and stuff, Charlie, love to have you, look at it, right? And for Charlie, invest was a pretty cool thing to have the confidence in you, a kid that meets thousands of people on a monthly basis, and everybody pitching him on everything that he should talk about. And boy, it was like a snap of a finger. Hey, Gary, I'm invested with you guys. I'm invested in Lightspeed. It's going to be great. So it's pretty cool.
No, what's I think what's really interesting is a lot of, Charlie, I think was a lot of people. I think Charlie was a huge celebrity, but a lot of people don't fully appreciate Charlie in his in his vision. Like, he basically, for a guy who had never gone to college, and maybe because he didn't go to college, that's an advantage more than a disadvantage. He could sort of see around corners. He could see the future trends and future lines on a lot of different things. And one of the key things he really cared about was making housing more affordable to people. And you know, a lot of people don't know this too, but Charlie's dad is an architect. So he grew up knowing that about housing. And one of the key things he said is, "Hey, we have to really make housing more affordable," and that was a key thing that he cared a lot about. So that's why I think, in terms of that's why we're fortunate to have him as an investor to drive some of the change in Lightspeed. So that was very beneficial. But I also think part of what he talked about is, hey, if we build in America where we have fewer regulations, and because of technology and all these other efficiencies, we can drive to an era of abundance, right? And I think that's a key thing. Is people sometimes just read the news and they see doom and gloom, but what a lot of people don't realize is, like, we live in a better era than we ever did. Like, the average American today, I would say, lives in many ways, okay, better than the richest American 100 years ago. Okay. I
Yeah.
mean, there are a lot of problems. I acknowledge a lot of the problems and challenges and everything we're dealing with in America. But at the same time, I think the potential with a lot of the technology and other market efficiencies that we create, I think we will see in America where housing becomes more affordable, education becomes more affordable, healthcare becomes more affordable, and it's not just affordability. I call it attainability, right? Like, it's not just we're not going to make a low quality product available to everybody. It's like we always made a high quality of product available at a cheaper price to everybody, so everybody gets that quality uh, and all the sort of features that come with it. So I think that's a big part of what we're driving towards. And you also made an earlier point, because whenever people talk about the robotics with Lightspeed, they talk about cost, the time to build, and the quality. But you brought up the point. Safety is a big issue. Okay, building homes is a dangerous profession. We don't appreciate that as Americans. Like every year, I think roughly about 1,000 people die in housing construction.
Sure.
Die on the job. And then also about I think it's roughly about 160,000 people get injured every year in building homes. That's like, putting having a nail gun drive through your hand, or sawing a finger off, or falling
Yeah.
off the roof. These things are very dangerous, and they actually reflected in the injuries and disabilities to people in the world of construction.
But when people think about that, because they're saying, okay, yeah, but there's no jobs, so you got to have jobs, right? If the odds of injury and death are there, but you have jobs, right? If you're going to eliminate jobs, then what? So the question always next is, jobs are, where the jobs going to be? Tell us about that, Biju, what your thoughts are.
Yeah, so I mean, one thing I'll say, right, is that when when you create solutions like this, you're first creating the solution so you can so it benefits all Americans, and we've always done a good job with that. The main thing I'd say too is that when you create these solutions, it's hard to exactly imagine what those future jobs are going to be. But when you create these efficiencies, the future jobs always come, and they're better jobs than the ones we're doing today. Okay, so example, 100 years ago, 30% of this country worked on a farm. Okay, 100 years ago. It's not. I mean, it's a long time, but it's also not that long a time. Okay, and at that point, if when the first farming automation, like the combine harvesters and all came out, and the more automated tractors and all came out, right? If you told those 30% who were working on a farm that, hey, there'll be jobs in the future, I think it would have been hard for them to imagine what those jobs in the future
Sure.
are. But what's really interesting is there are way more jobs today than there were back than 100 years ago, even on a per capita basis, right? There are way more jobs. And that's always been the case. Then about, I would say, in the 60s, I think it was like 30% of America worked in a factory, 20 to 30% worked in a factory. I don't know the exact number, but it was a very high number worked in a factory. And now a lot of that has been automated. And I think we're also going to reshore a lot of the manufacturing back to this country, but it's going to happen with robotics and automation.
Sure.
And then there are always new jobs that happen in the future. Like nobody would have imagined the job of being a social media, influencer, right? Nobody would have imagined the job of financial advisors. The way we have financial advisors now is we had like 50 years ago. Nobody would have imagined
Sure.
all these jobs. And I think somebody gave the example that even with all these jobs, actually, with all this automation, what actually happens is the net jobs end up being way more. So, example, I think the example was like with ATMs. Like when ATMs first came out, everybody said, "Hey, there won't be you won't
Bank tellers, huh?
dollars anymore." But there are actually more people working bank branches, as a result of that. So things change, and I think
Sure.
we always just drive towards higher productivity.
Okay, so I want to get to vision. You're one of the best visionaries I've ever met, right? To be able to, see what's going to happen in the future by the technology today and where it's developing, tomorrow. But where do you see? Okay, I love this Lightspeed business. I'm really excited about the business. I've invested in it because I love you and I love the business and the model. It's going to be amazing, right? But where do you see? I got a house in Lake Geneva that I want to build, and I want to build it. I want to be the first house on Lake Geneva to build it with Lightspeed. Okay, and what's it going to look like if I want to build this house? Let's say I want to start the construction. I want to put the foundation in 10 months from now. I want the deck going on. 10 months in a couple weeks from now, let's say 11 months from now. can Lightspeed do this job at that point? Will you be ready? Or what is your vision of when you'll be ready to have robots on the job building houses?
So we'll have some robots on the job building houses like in Q1 of this year, which is in of Q1 of 2026, not of this year, but of 2026. Um, and as these robots roll out, like they will, just like any other technology product, they'll keep driving towards higher and higher efficiency in building those homes. So to like, for example, like in 10 months from now, if you're laying, foundation for your home in Lake Geneva, it should be able to build parts of your home in Lake Geneva. And then as we progress, it'll build a higher and higher percentage of homes like that in Lake Geneva, or or any other part of the country, right? And I think
Okay, well, let me say, whether it be a custom home like I'll build, or a 2,000 duplicatable home, a 2,000 square foot duplicatable home with just some small variations on the architecture, right? From one to the other, can it do all the above, or is it pretty much going to be focused on just those that kind of the easy ones?
yeah, so I would say that's a great thing with AI, right? Like with AI, you can component component ties the home into all these different parts. And whether you're building a 10,000 square feet home or a 2,000 square feet home, it should be able to just put the components together, and you should be able to assemble those components almost like a Lego block, like a Lego playset, right? And so it should be, and that's a great thing with AI is you can have 100,000 different designs,
Mhm.
and to a robot it doesn't matter, right? And the robot is with that AI model is acting like the most expert carpenter, the expert plumber, the expert electrician. Okay, and we still need carpenters, electricians, and plumbers on site, but we'll need way fewer of their hours so they can build way more homes than they did before, right? And that's effectively what's going to happen.
Amazing.
Like all the technology in the music industry didn't eliminate musicians, but it made, like, you just end up having the most high value musicians in the music industry, and the same thing is going to happen with robotics and construction. But I think the key thing, Gary, is like today that even the a 3,000 square foot home is largely unaffordable for Americans. So I think that the key thing, that at least a vision from that standpoint, is that everybody should be able to build that the average size home in America, which for a new home today is about 2,500 to 3,000 square feet. They should be able to build a 3,000 square feet custom home that they can basically go to a website, design with an AI model, and have that built in a week. I think that's where it's going to go to. That's very attainable.
Well, okay, so think about that vision. Chris, you're listening now, and the audience is listening. Think about the vision of, designing a home, and it's all done and designed, and you send it to Lightspeed, and within a week, the home is delivered on, I'm guessing in panelized sections, right, on a flatbed, and then what happens? Then robots exit another box truck or exit a vehicle and proceed to put the house up. Is that the visual?
Yeah, so when we have these panels come, we have humans basically install the first few panels, and then we have a combination of humans and robots work on the inside of the home to get it to get it to a finish, right? But then the humans and the robots, I mean, they'll always be humans working in some way, but the humans and the robots working together are just going to be working with a high level of efficiency that they can get it done. They can get it done in that short period of time. That's a key aspect of doing that and kind of driving that efficiency to build. Because one of the key things, right, beyond the new homes we need to build, I would say, let's just take Chicago, for instance, right? 70 or 80% of the homes in Chicago are like 75 years old. Okay, they're from the 50s and the 60s. And what do we do? And I would ask each of us this question. Most of us are living in a home which was not built new in the last 20 or 30 years, but was built 80 years ago. Okay, but built for a completely different family and a completely different lifestyle. The appliances that home supported back then are completely different than the appliances today, and the layouts and all the different. So what do? We ended up basically changing these homes to make it fit our current lifestyle. But we're living in a home that was designed for 10 owners ago.
Mm.
Okay? And that needs to change. Like for our life, everybody's lifestyle, their family is unique. So we need to do something that's unique for your life, your family, your taste. And that's the key thing with robotics, is that everybody can really have that custom home than buy just a cookie cutter home.
Okay, so the average home today is it 40 years old? Is there something out there that says how that the average home is
Yeah, I
in
would say
America?
the average home is, let's just say, take the Midwest. Okay, is in the Midwest, I think the average home is like about anywhere from 60 to 80 years old.
Wow.
The average home. I mean, the state with the youngest housing supply is Nevada, because that got settled a lot later. But a lot of the homes in Chicago, if you go on Zillow or Realtor.com and just look at the age, it shows you the age the home is built. You'll see a lot of the homes are built in the 50s and 60s.
Amazing to think about. Yeah. I mean, they're not going to be as efficient. They're not going to be as user friendly, right? All the things that you would like to see aren't going to be there. Where, like you're saying, if the cost was reduced by 30%, those would be upgraded and replaced and remodeled much faster, wouldn't they? That's awesome. Okay, so Chris, you listened to all this. This amazing next next level of technology that he's going after and discovering. What kind of question you got, Chris, for my buddy?
Yeah, Biju, this is fascinating what you're doing with Lightspeed. As someone who pays attention pretty intensely to the housing market, it seems like this type of disruption is necessary, and it could massively disrupt the housing industry, almost to the point where I'm like, should me and other kind of late 30s, early 40s, like wait to buy a home for 5 years until this like kicks into gear, and then homes are a tenth the price, or what? Can you speak to that perspective?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think one is, whenever disruption happens in a market, right? Like, it never happens overnight. It takes a while, especially for something as big as housing, right? There are 144 million homes in the country. And I think our technology, when it's rolled out at scale, but that still takes some time, right? Rolling out any technology at scale, like basically, I'll just give you an example. So in the late 1990s, right, with the internet, that's the height of what they call the internet boom, and the Amazons and all the world came out, and when they looked, at that point, online sales were still like less than 0.5% of total retail sales. You know, it took a while for online sales to get to even 10% of sales. It took many years after that, like maybe a decade after that, right? So,
Mm.
so my point is, you can't stop, because like we said, the housing is such a fundamental need. Like, so for you, it's like you're making decisions about your family, your work, all these other things for a home. So it's not like the stock market, where the home prices change by the minute. So I would say, go ahead and buy a home like you would normally buy a home. Just pay attention to these change factors. But as they come out, it will definitely influence the pricing of housing, the availability of housing, and also the type of house, right? But I think the bigger thing that's going to happen, Gary and Chris, is not just that. It's not that we're going to live in the same kind of house and it's just going to get cheaper. If that type of house gets cheaper, what generally happens is that we will want more features in that house, right? So I think some people buy, we'll just have a wider variety of choices. And so some people say, hey, I want a simpler house that's like this. Somebody else will say, well, previously I could buy a 3,000 square foot house. Now I'm going to buy a 5,000 square foot house. Okay. And that's a lot of that's going to happen. I think the market dynamics will change. But but you don't. In my suggestion is at least like don't wait to make other decisions in your life just because you're waiting for the markets to change, especially in something like real estate where things don't the markets don't move that dynamically. I mean, or that
Mhm.
fast.
Mhm. Yeah, got it, got it. Um, awesome. No, that's a great answer. It seems that technology is obviously like a huge component of this revolution disruption, but also just legislation and rules and housing regulations are another huge factor in this. Um, do you think we need to make major changes there? Does that need to be like a huge emphasis for this to actually, help with what I would call the housing crisis?
Absolutely. I mean, there is that's a great question, a great point that
Thank you.
I think we didn't talk about earlier, which is that there's a huge what I call regulatory drag to housing, right? Which is like the zoning laws, permitting, inspections, all these other things, just add so significant amount of cost and time in building a house. And they're both just as, just as bad. Like time is just as bad as cost, but they both are bad. So I think, and what happens with the cost aspect of it is there are all these like fees, you have to pay, where in some cases these fees can be 10, 20, 30% of the cost of a house of a new build, you know. Um, and it's actually that's a really bad thing. So 100%, those have to sort of come down. And I think there are, and most of these, unfortunately, the bulk of these regulations, there are regulations all over. The bulk of these regulations are at the municipal level, so they are, in your town, city, or village level regulation, and that needs to be streamlined badly. The good thing, I would say, the good thing here is that we have, I think we have. There is a keen interest by the current administration to reduce those regulations in a big way, because I think everybody wants to make housing. Whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, you want to make housing more affordable. I think it's a common thing that both sides always agree on. Like we have to make housing more affordable. And then
And you also want to be able to rebuild faster. I mean, like the fires out in California or the hurricanes in Florida, whatever, right? I mean, you can see a big difference in those marketplaces where regulatory environment's super high, where it takes years and people give up even, right? And rebuilding compared to some areas of Florida where I see rebuilding super fast within weeks, days or weeks, they're already started, and within 6 months it's rebuilt compared to other markets where it's terrible regulation. It'll take 2, 3, 4, or 5 years. That's not acceptable, right? And so this is a solution for that to really speed that up, in my opinion. Not that we don't have to work on regulations, 'cause you definitely do. As you're saying, your local regulatory environment is definitely something that can hurt or help this.
Yeah, but you know what's really interesting, Gary, too, is that when you speed up the time to build, then it puts a lot of a focus on every other aspect of the
No,
build,
true.
right? You can't build
Sure.
a house in 2 weeks and the permitting for your house took a year, right?
Exactly.
That's unacceptable. The other good thing though is that the underlying technology that's helping home building is also going to help some of the regulations. So what that means is, I mean, regulations are there to make people safe, right? So now I think the cool thing from an AI perspective is you can use AI to really decide, is the plan permit ready or not, right? Instead of
Sure.
having the traditional cycle where it's going into the village's approval, permitting department, and they have so many permits that a human being has to look at every detail of, and that's going to take them a month to 2 to 3 to get to it. Here you can have AI do that in seconds and give you the answer right now in seconds. And that should be, I think, that's the beauty of AI, is that it should make our lives considerably easier, especially on the housing front, especially on the regulation front with housing, but it should do that all across, right? We should be in this, I call it like this e-government drive, where we kind of drive to remove a lot of regulations all across, but still be safe. So I think you can
Yeah,
do both because of AI, and that's a cool thing. And this housing is a great example of that.
for sure. No doubt about it. And I love where it's going. It's gonna get better for sure. You know, where I'm at here in Florida, it'll take 2 years to 3 years to build a house.
Wow.
2 to 3 years. And they're good sized houses, but they're not obnoxious. And they're, you know, you're talking 4 or 5 thousand, big house. So if you're 4 or 5 thousand feet, it'd be 2 to 3 years, which is crazy, unacceptable.
You know, the average cost of a home in America is now, I think, about 400,000, 420,000. And you know, people say, hey, it used to be 50,000 in the 50s, but now it's 420,000. And one big part of part of that is this regulation. But the other part of it is we're dealing with a bigger house, where we have a house that's almost 3 times the size of the house that we had in the 50s.
Mhm.
And that's not, the fact that we want homes that are 3 times the size is not a bad thing. It's just that we have to build it with much more efficiency. I don't think,
Sure.
as Americans, I don't think our goal or our vision should be we're going to live in micro homes, or we're only going to live in vertical cities. That should not be what we aim or shoot for. I think we should be looking for, we should have a higher quality of life. We should have a bigger house, but that's affordable for everybody. And these are very doable goals, and this will happen with technology. So
Love it. What do you think about that, Chris?
Yeah, that's awesome. This is such an exciting future that you're driving here, Biju. This awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your time and expertise with us. This is very exciting.
well, thank you for this platform. Thank you for this the ability to talk about this idea. But it's a reality. I mean, this is going to be, I think you're going to see progress happen so fast that people might find that even hard to believe. So
Progress can happen in light speed, baby. Light speed, not just fast.
that's why we picked that name.
That's a great name. I mean, I can't think of a better name than that. You did an awesome job branding this thing. It's gonna be so much fun. And when we look at all these things, right, Bijou, our listeners get so much out of your mind, your wisdom, and it's so much fun to listen. Just to reiterate the same things you talked about before, and you always talk about, right? It's our goal should be to take a product from the few to the many, like as every great product has through the years, right? So many things were not accessible to the many initially, almost everything, and how we do that's important, and it takes great leadership to do that. Leadership that likes to serve, not about just making that short-term buck, but in the long run, just making an impact that's sustainable. That's really serving the world much better. So it's fun to watch you go from one amazing business to another. I call these unicorns. Most people in their lives, if they're part of one unicorn, that's amazing. You're not satisfied with one unicorn serving a big market. You want by the time you're 70, 80 years old, there might be 10 unicorns that in my opinion, that Biju is responsible for. So really fun to watch what you're doing, and fun to see how you continue to progress as technology progresses, and you embrace it. You look at these new challenges and you embrace them instead of fear them like many people do. You're just, okay, what's the next great challenge? What's the next great problem to solve? And as long as you keep doing that, man, I want to be at your side. Invest in a little bit when you allow me to, right? Invest in a little bit in any of your amazing ideas, and just be more importantly, being there as a friend to have fun, to watch your success and introduce you to other friends that you could be a blessing to. So it's so much fun. And
yeah, go ahead.
No, it's a blast. Yeah, and I, now you're going from one product that's originally served a small market to a big market. Then the next product that in the banking fintech world serve a small market to a big market globally. Now this one, right? Lightspeed is going to serve the world like nothing else I've ever seen. Maybe Microsoft and a couple others have done something like this before, but not many. So it's going to be a blast, baby.
Well, thank you so much, Gary. And I'd say, I think for everybody, as every entrepreneur, right? I think one, I don't like to measure, myself by whether something is a unicorn or not. I look at, I think it'll be great to look at things as, hey, what is the impact, to your point? And I think you've been talking about impact, right? And I think everybody should look at their impact balance sheet, right? Now, they're not just their financial balance sheet, but hey, what is the impact balance sheet? Because the impact balance sheet, will always be there. The impact balance sheet is what you will remember. Okay, how many lives can you make this an impact on? And that I think it's one of many ways to look at the world. And I think to your point too, right? With all these advances in technology with AI, it's such a great time to be alive, because you're going to see these massive differences where I think we'll see um, the lowering of the cost of a lot of different goods, so that they're more attainable to everybody. And it's not just housing; it'd be a lot of different things. And I think it's a great thing. I think it's an era of abundance. Okay, I mean, and there'll be a lot of hiccups, roadblocks, and all along the way, but we'll solve those. But it's a great era of abundance where everybody can have access to all these things because of the advances we have in technology.
Absolutely. Yeah. So think about this, Chris, the impact this our buddy here has made in the world and will continue to make in the future. You think about Ditch Digger CEO, this podcast that we do because we love doing it, totally for fun. We love doing it, but think of the impact these individuals on our show have made, right? The Bijus of the world, the Charlies of the world, the Jimmy Johns of the world, right? The Darleys of the world. Just think of the impact so many of these people have made on the world. And the only way we have people on our show is that they've got to be a little bit humble. They've got to be confident, but humble. We don't want people that think it's all about them. And we don't have those people on our podcast. And Biju, you're an example of that, a guy that, I watched the way you've lived in the last 20 years, and man, you're a humble servant, and proud to be friends with you, brother, and proud to have you on our show. Thanks for being here today, buddy. And we're gonna catch up with you probably in the next year or two as these houses are being thrown up one after another with 80% robots, and people are going to be asking about where's that Biju guy? When do you get Biju back on, right? So we're gonna check in with you here in another year, probably a year and a half, I think, before we're going full steam.
Yeah, it's great. Listen, great to be your friend, great to be your partner in all these things. So very excited, and thanks for having me on the show, both Gary and Chris, and excited to be part of this as this evolves. So
Thanks, brother. Thanks so much. You have a spectacular day, and until next time, see ya.